On 7 June 1942, Franklin D. Roosevelt sat alone in the Oval Office, listening to naval updates, unaware the war had just tilted. The morning air felt heavy, the radio crackled softly. Aides moved quietly nearby, history waited. Across the Pacific, near a speck called Midway Atoll, American pilots hunted shadows. Fuel gauges dropping, courage stretched thin. Roosevelt did not yet know the scale, the carriers burning, the balance shifting beneath empires. For 6 months after Pearl Harbor, defeat haunted Washington. Allies doubted survival, oceans seemed hostile. Every decision crossed Roosevelt's desk. Maps spread wide, pins marking losses. Hope thinning daily. That Sunday morning, messages arrived piecemeal, coded and cautious, carrying hints of the impossible. Admiral Chester Nimitz waited in Hawaii, watching clocks, trusting intuition, gambling everything. At Midway, dive bombers screamed downward. Japanese decks erupted. Steel twisted violently, men vanished. For carriers, Akagikaga Sorya-Hiryu, symbols of invincibility, were dying almost at once. Back in Washington, Roosevelt finally heard the words. For enemy carriers lost, confirmation pending. Witnesses recalled his silence. A long exhale, eyes closing briefly. Weight lifting. He understood instantly what this meant, not victory yet, but survival assured, momentum reborn. Midway was not just ships, it was time gained, blood repaid, futures reopened. Roosevelt turned to his advisors. Voice steady but hushed, eyes sharp with calculation, asking what Japan could replace. The answer mattered deeply, factories lagged. Pilots were irreplaceable, doctrine exposed. In that room, on that date, the war felt different, fragile yet promising. Outside the White House, the world kept turning. Newspapers printing rumors, unaware a hinge had moved. Roosevelt allowed himself a moment. Brief and private, breath held silently, before duty reclaimed him. Midway's echo would soon travel outward, shaping choices ahead, demanding resolve yet unseen. By the evening of 8 June 1942, Roosevelt gathered his inner circle. The mood transformed yet restrained. Harry Hopkins leaned forward, cigarette unlit. Sensing opportunity mixed with danger, caution ruling triumph. Reports now confirmed the scale, 4 Japanese carriers sunk. Hundreds of planes gone, veteran pilots lost. Roosevelt absorbed each detail slowly. Fingers tapping maps, mind racing beyond celebration. He asked quietly how Tokyo might respond. Retaliation expected, pride wounded. Vengeance likely swift. The Pacific still stretched vast and lethal. American losses real, Yorktown damaged beyond saving. Yet Midway proved something vital. Japanese plans cracked, intelligence mattered. Courage could compensate scarcity. Roosevelt remembered dark days after Pearl Harbor. Speeches masking fear, allies watching nervously. Now he saw a narrative shift forming. One he must guide carefully, without arrogance or delay. Across oceans, Winston Churchill awaited news. Britain clinging to endurance, needing reassurance. Roosevelt dictated messages cautiously. Wording measured, victory implied not proclaimed. Confidence balanced with humility. He knew war punishes hubris, history remembers arrogance harshly. Restraint preserved legitimacy. Within the Navy Department, planners recalculated timelines. Offensive options whispering temptations. Roosevelt resisted rash moves. Understanding Japan still fought fiercely. Territory vast, blood inevitable. Midway was not the end, merely the first true reversal, fragile and precious. That night, Roosevelt spoke privately to Eleanor. Voice softer, admitting relief mixed with sorrow. Thousands had died unseen, young men burned or drowned, families yet uninformed. Victory carried weight, responsibility heavier than despair. Leadership demanded moral steadiness. Roosevelt slept briefly. Restless dreams haunted by flames at sea, futures unwritten. At dawn, he rose determined, aware Midway changed how America must fight. The war ahead would require patience. Industry, sacrifice, unity beyond politics. Midway offered hope, but demanded resolve to finish what had begun. On the morning of 9 June 1942, Roosevelt faced the press, composed yet guarded. Cameras waited, reporters sensed change. Rumors swirled through corridors, questions sharpened. He chose restraint carefully, revealing little. Letting silence amplify confidence without provoking Tokyo. Behind closed doors, intelligence officers briefed him further. Decrypted signals exposing Japanese confusion. The enemy reeled quietly, command shaken. Admirals stunned by sudden vulnerability. Roosevelt listened intently, understanding information itself was now a weapon. He ordered secrecy tightened. Midway framed publicly as hard fighting, not decisive triumph. Every word mattered, missteps could cost lives. Arrogance might awaken reckless retaliation. In the Pacific, survivors clung to wreckage, oil burning. Rescue planes searching relentlessly. Roosevelt thought often of those men. Nameless yet essential, courage shaping policy outcomes. At his desk, he studied production figures. Carriers under construction, pilots in training. Midway bought time, factories would now decide fate. Assembly lines becoming battlefields. He asked advisors how fast new Essex carriers could sail. Urgency pressing every schedule. Japan, he knew, could not match American industrial depth. Yet desperation breeds ferocity. That afternoon, Roosevelt approved accelerated shipbuilding. Budgets expanded without hesitation. The United States must strike when ready, not before, patience disciplined by memory. Across the globe, Axis leaders reassessed assumptions. Whispers spreading through embassies quietly. Power dynamics shifted subtly, perception changing before maps caught up. Roosevelt sensed history pivoting, yet refused complacency. Aware tides can reverse suddenly. Midway's lesson was humility paired with resolve, preparation married to courage. As night fell, he dictated notes for future speeches. Framing sacrifice as necessary and shared. The long war demanded unity, endurance, belief sustained through years ahead. By 10 June 1942, Roosevelt turned from reaction to intention. The strategist emerging fully. He summoned naval planners again, maps reappearing. Arrows tentative yet purposeful. Midway had cracked the Japanese shield. But the Pacific remained unforgiving and immense. Roosevelt understood geography intimately. Distances killing more men than bullets. He pressed Nimitz for honest assessments, not optimism, not fear, only truth. The reply came measured, Japan wounded but dangerous. Perimeter still strong, morale uncertain. Roosevelt nodded, appreciating restraint. Valuing commanders who resisted fantasy. He recalled earlier failures, underestimating enemies. Overestimating speed, lessons paid in blood. Now he emphasized coordination, Navy and Army bound together, rivalry shelved. Guadalcanal emerged quietly in discussion. A name unfamiliar, yet strategically electric. Roosevelt lingered on it, sensing future gravity, asking how soon forces could land. Advisors hesitated, risks enormous, logistics strained, experience thin. He did not push yet, allowing thought to mature, seeds planted deliberately. Midway had created space to think, something rare since Pearl Harbor. That afternoon, Roosevelt met congressional leaders. Bipartisan resolve solidifying. Budgets expanded again, shipyards humming, women and men flooding factories. He spoke not of victory, but of responsibility, framing war as generational duty. Across America, families scanned newspapers, pride mixing with anxiety. The president felt their gaze, distant yet intimate. Accountability pressing constantly. He asked Eleanor later about morale reports. Letters revealing exhaustion and determination. She told him hope mattered, honesty mattered more, people endured truth. Roosevelt absorbed this quietly, shaping tone for months ahead. Midway would become a symbol, but never a myth, reality preserved. As night settled, Roosevelt gazed at the Pacific map again. Knowing paths forward were narrower, yet clearer. The war's direction had shifted, but its cost was only beginning. On 11 June 1942, Roosevelt confronted the weight of opportunity. Cautious yet compelled. Midway's aftershocks rippled through strategy rooms. confidence rising but discipline enforced. He read casualty lists quietly, names blurring. Sacrifice anchoring ambition firmly. Every gain demanded payment. Roosevelt never forgot that arithmetic. Intelligence reports suggested Japan regrouping. Defensive lines stiffening, pride wounded deeply. Roosevelt sensed an opening window, one that would not stay open long. He pressed for readiness reports, aircraft availability, fuel reserves, troop endurance. The answers came mixed, enthusiasm high, experience limited, time critical. He recalled earlier American unpreparedness, vowing never to gamble blindly again. Still, leadership demanded motion, stasis inviting enemy recovery. The South Pacific loomed larger. Island chains resembling stepping stones across chaos. Roosevelt approved preliminary offensive planning, quiet and deliberate. Guadalcanal returned to conversations. Now spoken with seriousness, risk acknowledged. He authorized increased reconnaissance. Submarines probing Japanese supply lines stealthily. Every move sought advantage without spectacle, secrecy guarding fragile momentum. That afternoon, Roosevelt drafted a message to Stalin. Subtle confidence implied, solidarity reinforced. The war was global, Midway influencing far beyond Pacific waters. In London, Churchill read updates carefully, relief tempered by experience. Roosevelt understood alliances required reassurance. Victories shared to strengthen resolve. At dinner, conversation drifted briefly to domestic life, rare normalcy welcomed. Yet even laughter felt borrowed, temporary against looming sacrifice. As night deepened, Roosevelt dictated notes on post-war vision. Democracy preserved through endurance. Midway affirmed belief, but responsibility now expanded dramatically. He knew the path ahead demanded relentless pressure, patience, and blood. The Pacific War was turning outward. Toward offense, uncertainty accompanying hope. By June 1942, Roosevelt's focus sharpened further. The moment demanding resolve. Midway had shifted calculations, now action pressed closer, urgency creeping in. He reviewed carrier repair timelines. Enterprise and Hornet still vital, Yorktown mourned. Loss tempered triumph, reminding him balance ruled warfare cruelly. Briefings emphasized pilot shortages. Experience irreplaceable, training accelerated painfully. Roosevelt understood machines could be built quickly, men could not. He approved expanded flight programs. Accepting higher training risks. Necessity overriding comfort. Across the Pacific, Japanese command struggled internally. Blame circulating quietly. Roosevelt sensed this fracture, an enemy doubting itself grows dangerous or brittle. He urged intelligence to exploit confusion, deception plans emerging cautiously. Radio silence, feints, misinformation, war fought beyond gunfire. At lunch, Roosevelt spoke openly with generals. Encouraging disagreement, discouraging flattery. He valued dissent, knowing groupthink kills faster than bullets. Guadalcanal planning solidified subtly. Logistics officers sweating tonnage calculations. Roosevelt asked about malaria. Supply shortages, weather patterns. Small details shaping fate. Nothing was too minor, islands devoured careless men. That evening, he addressed a small group of senators, forthright and sober. Midway was a beginning, not a promise, effort must intensify nationwide. Factories would run longer, rationing stricter, families asked for more. Roosevelt accepted political risk, believing truth fortified unity. Later, Eleanor read letters from mothers, fear mingling with pride. Roosevelt listened silently, emotion controlled, resolve hardened. Midway gave him leverage, but also obligation to use it wisely. The coming months would test patience, coordination, and moral stamina. As midnight passed, Roosevelt remained awake. Staring at Pacific routes, choosing when to strike. On June 1942, Roosevelt sensed momentum tightening. Like a drawn bow. Midway's clarity now demanded direction. Hesitation risking dilution of advantage. He convened senior commanders again. Voices low, tension deliberate. Stakes understood. Discussions circled timing, whether to strike soon or consolidate strength. Roosevelt listened more than he spoke. Absorbing uncertainty without revealing preference. The Pacific punished impatience, yet rewarded boldness at precise moments. Reports from Hawaii suggested Japanese patrols stretching thin. Response times slowing. Roosevelt marked this quietly, opportunity revealing itself between lines. Guadalcanal planning advanced another step. Landing dates whispered, logistics strained. He approved additional transport ships. Knowing steel and fuel decided survival ashore. Maps showed jungles, airfields unfinished, coastlines hiding danger. Roosevelt imagined young Marines stepping into surf, fire erupting suddenly. That image grounded him. Courage demanded responsibility from those ordering it. He insisted commanders understand conditions fully, no illusions allowed. Midway had succeeded because realism prevailed over doctrine. That afternoon, Roosevelt received diplomatic cables from Tokyo's neutral intermediaries. Tone suggested shock, deflection, denial masking internal crisis. Roosevelt recognized familiar patterns. Nations rarely admit wounds quickly. He instructed restraint publicly, silence sharper than taunts. Psychological pressure mattered, uncertainty eroding confidence steadily. As evening approached, Roosevelt addressed a small radio audience. Words calm and steady. He spoke of perseverance, sacrifice shared, destiny shaped collectively. Listeners sensed reassurance, though few knew why. Privately, Roosevelt acknowledged the burden growing heavier. Midway unlocked possibility, but choices ahead would define legacy. That night, storms rolled over Washington, thunder echoing distant guns. Roosevelt watched rain streak windows, knowing calm moments were fleeting. The next move would carry consequences measured in blood and years. By 14 June 1942, Roosevelt confronted the silence after revelation. The calm before motion. Midway's shock had settled, now its meaning hardened into responsibility. He studied weather reports from the South Pacific. Storms dictating fate as much as guns. Nature was an enemy too, indifferent and lethal, shaping every timetable. Roosevelt pressed planners on airfield construction speeds. Runways deciding survival ashore. Engineers warned of mud, heat, disease, conditions no map could soften. He accepted this grimly, understanding wars are won in discomfort. The question was no longer if America would go forward, but how soon. Guadalcanal's name appeared again, no longer tentative, now central. Roosevelt approved final reconnaissance flights, eyes probing jungle and reef. Each photograph carried weight, revealing terrain where lives would hinge. In intelligence briefings, Japanese communications hinted at overextension, supply lines thin. Roosevelt recognized vulnerability, yet feared traps, experience breeding caution. He ordered contingency plans layered, retreats planned alongside advances. Victory required exits as much as entrances. That afternoon, Roosevelt met quietly with Navy Secretary Frank Knox. They spoke of ships as living things, crews bonded to steel. Knox described morale lifting, Midway inspiring belief without arrogance. Roosevelt valued this balance, pride controlled by memory. Letters from the Pacific arrived, pilots describing chaos and courage. Roosevelt read them alone, absorbing humanity behind strategy. He reminded himself numbers never told full truth. As evening fell, Roosevelt approved final operational discussions. Timing narrowing. The die was not yet cast, but fingers rested upon it. Midway had opened a door, now America stood in its frame. The next step would commit thousands, alter the war irrevocably. Roosevelt ended the day aware hesitation was fading. The Pacific waited, patient and merciless. On 15 June 1942, Roosevelt felt the weight of inevitability settle fully. Midway no longer echoed as surprise, now it pressed as obligation. He convened final planning sessions, voices firm, doubts acknowledged but contained. Guadalcanal timing sharpened, late summer emerging, risk accepted consciously. Roosevelt questioned every assumption. Fuel consumption, air cover radius, evacuation plans. Nothing escaped scrutiny, the margin for error razor thin. Admirals spoke of Japanese response speed, counterattacks expected, losses probable. Roosevelt accepted this grimly, war offered no clean victories. He recalled earlier hesitation before Pearl Harbor. Resolved never again to delay when action mattered. Midway had proven boldness guided by intelligence could prevail. That lesson shaped his choice now. He authorized continued preparations, effectively committing the nation forward. Though no public announcement followed, the decision's gravity was unmistakable. Lives had been wagered. Futures intertwined with islands few Americans could pronounce. Roosevelt spent the afternoon drafting correspondence, steadying allies, preparing public narrative. He framed coming operations as necessity, not conquest, defense through action. The language mattered, shaping morale before blood spilled. In private moments, Roosevelt reflected on the Japanese sailors lost at Midway. Enemy humanity lingered in his mind, tragedy shared across flags. He understood war's cruelty was universal. Leadership demanded empathy without weakness. As dusk settled, Roosevelt wheeled himself to the window, gazing westward. The Pacific lay unseen, vast and unforgiving, decisions already moving across it. Midway had offered a moment of breath, now exhalation ended. The machinery of war turned steadily, unstoppable once engaged. Roosevelt prepared himself for casualty telegrams yet to come. History would judge this choice, but delay would judge harsher. Night fell quietly, masking a nation stepping toward its next trial. On 16 June 1942, Roosevelt awoke knowing the threshold had been crossed. Midway was no longer a report or a revelation, it had become direction. He began the day early, reviewing final summaries. Movements already unfolding quietly. Ships sailed without fanfare. Orders transmitted in coded calm. History advancing silently. Roosevelt understood this was his answer to Midway, not words, but commitment. When aides recalled his reaction days earlier, they remembered one sentence spoken softly. "Japan cannot replace what she has lost," he said, measured and final. It was not triumph, it was calculation, the clarity of industrial war. For carriers meant more than steel, they meant pilots, doctrine, confidence erased. Roosevelt knew replacement took years, not months, and time now favored America. Yet he never spoke of Midway as destiny, only as opportunity earned painfully. That afternoon, he approved messaging that framed the war as long and costly. No victory parades, no promises of speed, only resolve and endurance. Roosevelt had learned from 1918, false hope corrodes faster than fear. Privately, he reflected on leadership's loneliness. Choices made without applause. Midway had offered relief, but also burden. Success demanded follow-through. He thought of Nimitz, of pilots diving through flak, of sailors trapped below decks. Their actions had shifted the world, now policy must honor that sacrifice. As evening fell, Roosevelt addressed a small group again. Voice calm, eyes steady. He spoke of confidence without arrogance, strength without cruelty. The war would be won by persistence, not moments alone. Midway was one moment, luminous and costly, but incomplete. Roosevelt ended the day resolved to remember it correctly. Not as a miracle, but as proof preparation and courage could bend fate. The Pacific War now moved forward relentlessly, shaped by that understanding. History would later ask what Roosevelt said at Midway. What mattered more was what he did afterward.